Welcome. I'm Edwin Rutsch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and this is our dialogues on how to nurture empathy-based family life and parenting. And I'm so pleased to have Charles Fay here to talk with us about. Thanks, Charles, for joining me.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to join you.
So I wanted to start off, Charles, by just introducing you, give a little bit of a background about you. That you're president of the Love and Logic Institute, and which is a positive parenting and educational resource. And you're also a parent, internationally recognized author, consultant, public speaker, and from your website, I see it says you're a child, adolescent, and family psychotherapist, as well as you consult, do consultation strategies for teachers and school improvement. And so is there more you'd like to add by way of introduction?
I suppose that's all, really. And I was, Love and Logic is really, the Institute is really a small family company. We've been around since 1977. And my father, Jim Fay, was not raised with particularly empathetic parents, and he grew up with the, hey, when I say jump, you ask how high, and don't cry, you know, I'll give you something to cry about kind of thing. And that's all generational, because my grandparents on both sides really, they had hard lives, and it goes back and back, and lots of poverty and struggles that many families have in their backgrounds. And so my dad was not happy with the way he was parenting and the way he was working with kids, but he didn't know what else to do. There's something about yelling, and there was something about not being particularly warm that didn't feel good to him. But, you know, we have all these neurons in our brains that when we're parented a certain way, and then when we do something for a long time, those neurons get, those connections get pretty strong, and it's hard to change real quick. And so he started searching, and he studied a lot of different philosophies and approaches to parenting and working with people, and started experimenting. And I was one of the guinea pigs. And that's why I say I became a psychologist, just to figure out what happened to me when I was a little kid. And but the testimony about Love and Logic for me is that I ended up having really great relationships with both my parents, because they did become incredibly empathetic, and I felt that I got that gift of unconditional love, which is, as we all know, is such a critical piece, that we yearn for connections with people where they truly love us for who we are, not what we produce, or not that they just value us. And that's such a key part of the empathy, in my opinion, is just valuing people and separating what they do from who they are. And so, but it was kind of an interesting story, at least to me it was, in that he came to this conclusion. He was working with a lot of people that overindulged their kids. They didn't set limits, and then if the kids messed up, the parents would always rescue the kid out of the consequence. And so the kids were kind of irresponsible and a little bit entitled and a little nasty acting. And so he decided, okay, I'm going to teach parents how to set limits, and I'm going to teach them how to hold their kids accountable with logical consequences. Sounded so good. So he taught them to set limits by describing what they would do instead of telling their kid what to do. For example, instead of saying, you know, you need to stop arguing with me, the Love and Logic parent might say, hey, I listen when your voice is calm. You know, or instead of, you know, you need to take out that trash now. You know, Love and Logic parent might say, oh, I'll be happy to take you to your friend's house as soon as those jobs are done. You know, real friendly, but I'm describing what I can do, and instead of bossing the kid around. So they taught people that. And then the rudimentary, this is early Love and Logic. They also taught them to basically hold the kid accountable with a logical consequence. And this worked for about half of the people. It's not a good success rate. And my dad he would come home and say, I don't know why this isn't working for half of the people. And so they started studying real people who are highly effective with kids. And what they discovered was the empathy. That the most effective people, they still had consequences and limits for the kids, but they'd lock in the connection first. They'd lock in the empathy, the sincere empathy before they corrected the kid or before they provided the consequence. So let's say it's a fairly significant issue. Maybe the kid shoplifted. And understandably, I think most of us can admit that we don't have a ton of empathy right on the tip of our tongue when a kid has done something that is really upsetting. And the initial reaction is, what were you thinking? And I can't believe you did that and all that. And that's natural. That's a natural feeling to have.
How did the empathy part come in? Like even the vocabulary of empathy?
Oh, okay. I'll explain that to you.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the first part of it was realizing that most people cannot be empathetic if they try to deal with something immediately. Okay, and then they started studying people, and one of the things that people would do is they go to the kid, and maybe they were honest about how they felt about what the kid did, but they'd say something like this: "Oh, I'm not really sure how to respond to that. And I love you so much. We're going to have to talk about it later." And they buy themselves some time. That's one of the first things we noticed is we need time to really reflect and think and maybe go to our friends and talk about it, right? Then what we discovered was the most effective people just really kept it pretty simple. The first thing we noticed was the nonverbal. Oh. A lot of times the people didn't say a whole lot. It's like, oh, honey. Oh, I can't imagine how sad this must be for you. And notice, I'm not talking about my feelings. I'm talking about what the kid is feeling. The people who were not so effective would say things like, well, this makes me really mad, or this is real bad for me.
Talking about themselves instead of what they're imagining or feeling into the experience of the child.
And one of the key concepts that, Edwin, a lot of people ask me social skills. How do you teach kids social skills? And there's a lot of really good programs out there. There's a lot of good concepts, but at the core of it, in my mind, is how do we help kids learn how to take emotional turns? So in other words, how do we help kids learn how to make the conversation or the interaction about the other person before they make it about themselves? And isn't that a great gift when you run into somebody and you can just feel it. It's like they decide, I'm going to put my own perspectives and my own feelings about all of this and on the back burner, and I'm going to make this about you. And there's something about those people that just bring the best out of us. So in a nutshell, they discovered that there was this, they'd give themselves a break and they wouldn't try to deal with the shoplifting or something else big right away, right? Then the second thing is they go to the kid and they talk about how hard it must be for the kid. Wow. I bet, I can't imagine how scary this must be for you. And well, it wasn't my fault. The kids will say that, well, I didn't, I was just my friend, oh, not a lot of words, just a lot of love, a lot of nonverbal, oh. Yeah, I can't imagine how scary that was for you. Tell me about that. That's another. I love
that's a big
that.
one.
Tell me about it. I have 4 statements I like to use, and they're all designed to get people to talk. Tell me more about that. Parents are really wise to have that in their back pocket. And Or, oh, how long have you felt this way? You know, well, I hate living around here. Oh, no, how long have you felt this way? And you listen, even if you disagree with what the kids say.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is, what would you like to see here? Oh, you guys have too many rules. And, oh, how many rules do you think we ought to have? That kind of thing. You're thinking in your mind, maybe, well, you know, we're probably going to stick with the original plan, but I want to show the kid that I value their opinion, even if I can't change what I'm going to do, right? And let's see. So tell me more. Help me understand. That's one of them. How long have you felt this way? What would you like to see here? And have those little terms or those questions or discussion starters around the tip of your tongue.
Mm-hmm.
And so we blundered through this. Quite frankly, we studied people who were just naturally really good with kids, and we noticed that they said a lot of these things, but they also had a heart for kids, a heart for people. And one of the biggest things for me personally, I suppose, is recognizing that how many struggles I have. And sometimes people, you know, if you have an education or you've done some things that have been of note or whatever, they think, wow, you know, that guy's really got it together. Well, I want the whole world to know that I do not have it together. I don't know anybody who does. And when they say they do, I distrust them greatly. Okay. But coming to that sense of humility where we see how much we struggle and fall short, at least to me, helps us be a lot more empathetic with others. And so that's one of the key concepts of love and logic, is that we admit that parents learn how to become more effective by making mistakes. Yeah, you're not going to get it right away. Kids learn how to grow up and be good people by making a lot of mistakes. It's like my son, he's 8. And he comes home. His mom had bought him a yo-yo. And right away he looks at it and he says, well, I don't like that kind. Mm-hmm. Oh, and down deep, she's just irritated. But she's been practicing this a long time. And she says, oh, honey, I can understand you not liking it. Yeah, and that's okay. You don't have to have it. And she put it back in her purse. And he comes out in the yard and I'm pulling weeds. He's crying. Oh, no, you know, I really did like it, but now I don't get to have it. And, you know, it's so hard because you want to just make everything right. But empathy isn't sympathy. And that's a critical piece, is that empathy sends the message that I love you and I care about you. But also, I know that in order to learn and be happy and become a healthy person, you're going to have some struggles, and there'll be some consequences that come along. And I'll let the consequence do the teaching. I can love on you, right? So he's, well, I really wanted that. I said, oh, that's got to tell me more. He says, I just wish I was dead, which just feels disapparent. And oh, that's got to be a hard feeling. And the whole time I'm holding back, you know, all the lectures about how, you know, it's hard. But he never got the yo-yo, and he just got love. And I'm not always as good at it. I guess that I was having a good day, but he came, and it was just such a blessing because he just ran over and gave me a big hug. And you know, later on the day when he got done with being upset, and it was just to me, I'm thankful that for what I've been taught through learning these things, that is it's we don't have to be mean. We shouldn't be mean. We can get the job of discipline done and also be just warm at the same time. So that, I guess, is more or less a nutshell. I've done a lot of talking. So apologize for that.
So what I was hearing there is that the way that I guess your father, Jim, he kind of developed this love and logic, and it was through more like observation, like observing people, seeing who was successful in parenting, and out of that grew an awareness of the importance of empathy. There was the people who were highly empathic were the ones who were more successful. And so that from out of that, it kind of became part of the process, more of a conscious, maybe a conscious part of the process.
And we never set out to write books or do any of these things. He was just trying to figure out how to parent his own kids and work with the kids at his school. And, and so it became, and then he started being invited to other schools, and pretty soon people were calling him up from other states, and it just kind of took off. But it was never designed to be something where we developed what we have today. But it was through observation, and then through the study of people like Dreikers and Carl Rogers.
Okay.
And then as I studied in clinical and school psychology, studying the critical importance of empathy and attachment and bonding and all those related concepts. And then, of course, as the brain research really started taking off, say starting around 15, 20 years ago, we start seeing that, wow, it all clicks, that there are neurological reasons that scientists are identifying for that back up what we're teaching. Years ago, we used to say, early 80s, empathy opens the heart and the mind to learning. Because we thought, well, when just from observation, when we're empathetic with somebody, and show we care, they calm down, and they tend to be much more open to perhaps some of the ideas we have, and so the empathy has to come first. And then we see research on how the brain works and how this whole concept of fight or flight and stress reactions, and then right there you see it all come full circle. That and it's kind of fun to see those things being validated scientifically.
Yeah, so it sounds what I'm hearing there is that initially it was just learning kind of by doing. I guess your father was a principal, and he was working with children and with parents and kind of observing, and he started maybe doing presentations or teaching, and it grew and grew.
Yeah.
And so it was more the experiential, but now with all the science and so forth, it's creating more of a hard science and explanation for how all this, how empathy works, and kind of gives support.
And we've always been really focused on our niche, so to speak, has been focused on giving people like the actual words to use when they're working with kids, and not a lot of theory and not a lot of scientific discussion about the concepts, but giving them little experiments. So the next time your kid does something that makes you really mad, go to them, and if you can't be empathetic, at least be businesslike. Say, oh, I'm upset about what happened, and I make better decisions when I'm calm. So we teach them to model it. I make better decisions when I'm calm, so we'll talk later about it. Okay.
So the parent in kind of a heated situation already has that tool to say that you can sense, hey, I'm really upset now, I'm going to be getting angry, and you just say, well, let's talk about this when I'm calm, and that kind of gives you time to diffuse that perhaps that anger or that unempathic. You know, you might be unempathic.
Yeah. And it's important we teach them to say this over and over again. I make better decisions when I'm calm. Because we know what a powerful tool modeling is. Way more powerful than me saying to the kid, well, whenever you get upset, you need to stop and think. It's a whole lot more powerful for me to do it. And then
modeling it yourself and showing instead of telling.
And then coming back to the kid, and then after you're calm and you've kind of rehearsed it, use this thing. Just look at the kid and go, Oh, I love you. Oh, I was really getting upset about what you did. And then I thought, everybody makes mistakes. You broke the window. Oh, yeah, well, I didn't mean to. I know. And you didn't mean to, and you broke it. I bet you were really worried about what I was going to do. Well, what are you going to do? Well, what do you think you could do? See?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I know about you is that you know how to solve problems. Would you like some ideas about how to solve this problem? So again, empathy is not sympathy. Sympathy is more of so, oh, you poor thing, don't worry about the consequences, I'll fix everything for you because you can't handle it. It's sympathy is more of a demeaning message where you really can't handle this, and it's more about me. Sympathy is more about, I want to be the hero. I want to fix everything so I can feel good. I can't handle my kids having any disappointment or having to fix any problems they've created. So I just want to be happy. Empathy is about saying, wow, I value you. This doesn't change the way I feel about you. I love you the same regardless. And by the way, I know you're hurting over this. I can see it. And after listening for a while, the next part is, and how are you going to pay for that damage or whatever? Or, oh, I'd love to take you to your friends. The last time we went, you fought in the back seat so much with your brother. Oh, I just don't think I have the energy to do that today. Right? So there's consequence there. But the parent remains in that love mode, for lack of a better term.
Maybe an empathy mode or empathizing mode.
Yeah, the empathy mode. And but yeah, that's
well, one thing I look at is sometimes there's like this empathy, for the child or for someone else. How do you create let's say, a reciprocal empathy? It's so it's mutual, where you're kind of doing that by modeling it. So the child will mirror what they're seeing you do, so they're kind of learning it that way. But is there any more kind of an explicit or conscious way of creating this mutual reciprocal empathy?
Ideally, it all starts right at birth. And particularly during the first year and a half of life, where when the kid cries, the parent comes and meets that need consistently. Or when the kid is hungry, that need is met consistently. And so this kid has this basic sense of attachment and bonding where they develop a sense of empathy because somebody loved them first. And so the people who suffer the most with an absolute inability to be empathetic, and we call them sociopaths, they really don't have a sense of feeling for other people. The extreme case are people who consistently did not get their needs met during the first year and a half or 2 years of life. And so they're empty, and they don't have a template for being concerned about the needs of other people. So that's the foundation. After that comes lots of modeling it, lots of demonstrating it to the child, and lots of limit setting where the parent demonstrates that they expect to be treated well. See, when people ask me, what is love? I say, oh, people have been asking that question for a long time. But when I think of love, I think of empathy and compassion and warmth. But I also think about limits and boundaries. And see, if I really want to love my kids, I'll be able to say no to them in an empathetic way. Or I'll demonstrate that I'm not a doormat in an empathetic way. So it might be a teenager comes to the mom and says, like, Mom, like, you have to buy me a new cell phone. And they're real demanding and nasty. That's not very empathetic. That's not a culture of empathy right there, right? And so the parent, it's tempting because of our mirror neurons to act just like the kid. Well, I'm not buying you a cell phone with that attitude. So we override that neurological predisposition to match another person's tone. And this parent would say, honey, I am happy to provide things for people who treat me with respect. And of course, now this kid is going to go off. They're not going to say, oh, Mom, that was wonderful how you handled that. No, they're going to get upset. Well, how come all my friends? Oh, what did I say? What did I say? But see, we have an epidemic of kids who are, they have entitlement. And there's two reasons for kids developing a sense of entitlement. And at the very core of entitlement is a lack of empathy.
Mm-hmm.
You owe me.
Mm.
Okay? And I don't care what it takes, but you're going to give it to me. One reason kids have a sense of entitlement is because their needs weren't met when they were little babies. And emotionally, they're thinking, wow, people didn't take care of me when I was a little kid. Now they owe it to me. So somebody who's really been hurt and neglected oftentimes will have a sense of entitlement because of all the pain they went through. On the flip side, which is so interesting, it's like the opposite. We have a kid who's never had a limit. And they've been nurtured a lot, but they've never learned that there's boundaries. They've never learned that you can't walk all over people to get what you want. And so these kids develop the same attitude. They look very similar to the kid who was neglected. And they'll say things like, you owe it to me, and they'll manipulate and they'll hurt people just to get what they think they deserve. And so parents who are listening, my hope for you is that you would be very nurturing, very empathetic with both the kid and yourself.
Mm-hmm. So self-empathy, you mean like have empathy for yourself as well as the child have empathy for you? Or?
Right. And empathy for yourself is essentially knowing that it's okay to say no. And it's okay to set limits and allow the kids to be upset because they aren't getting everything they want. Because, we went back to this whole idea, going back to the whole idea of taking turns emotionally. Like so many people don't know how to have a conversation and not make it all about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they never have good relationships because they're just not fun to be around. And so part of that involves them seeing that they don't always get their way. And so the concepts of love and limits are not opposites if they're done correctly, in my opinion. They're part of the same perspective of, and really this is what it comes down to. I love my kids so much that I'm willing to put my feelings aside just for a while. In other words, I love them so much that I'm willing to be really empathetic with them, even though maybe down deep I kind of want to yell. I'm also going to put my desire as the parent to be the kid's friend, which isn't good. But I'm going to put my desire to be the kid's friend on the back burner because I know that this kid needs to have those limits. Yeah.
So in our family, just something that relates to this in terms of that turn taking, is, my extended family, my parents, my siblings, my partner, that we do something called empathy circles, where we get together as an extended family, and we have like an issue we're talking about, and one person shares within the group, and they speak to someone specifically who reflects back what they're hearing until the speaker feels fully heard. And then it's the listener's turn to speak to someone. So it's all about reflecting, kind of practicing that empathy, as well as the turn taking, that everybody gets a turn to share what's, up for them, and to be heard, kind of very explicitly being heard. So I think that turn taking is really, yeah.
And it sounds
good
like
skill.
it's a safe place, right, where you can express, honestly, your feelings and your hurts. And then that people it sounds like what you're saying is they're not going to be telling you what to do, but they're going to be listening and loving on you, and proving that they've listened.
That's it. They've proved that they've listened, and they can kind of give advice or something, but then that gets translated into empathy. It gets reflected, and then it kind of changes the nature of the quality of it. So
right,
yeah.
And so, how big of groups are these that you?
Well, we've done maybe 7, 8 people, maybe.
Yeah.
It seems to be the core of mediation as well. Do some family mediation, so it can be just 2 people, or just listening to one person who's needing to be heard, bringing a couple together, or it keeps expanding, so it can keep getting larger. But if it gets too large, everybody doesn't have a chance to share. So I like kind of a little smaller.
Yeah. Yes.
Everybody has
right. So you want to keep it small so everybody has an opportunity to talk, and yeah.
Well, okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights into love and logic and empathy. I really enjoyed the dialogue, and want to thank you for taking time to.
Well, thank you for listening.